consensus that is something which we would like to present. We need a motion to that effect. Council, annexation council, town council, if we are procedurally doing something incorrect, please stop us so that we can take the corrective steps. Motion for discussion. However, before we do it, council wanted to speak about behavior. However, I think that it was discussed already. I think we've done an adequate job.
I think you did a fine job.
Okay, thank you.
So that's over.
Okay, Michael, please. Again, this is the first time I think in the history of Orange County Television in the United States that we've had such an audience for an issue that sometimes tends to go unnoticed, but certainly it hasn't here tonight.
As everyone present knows, there are two annexation petitions pending before the village board and the town board. The first petition was filed in December of 2013 and seeks to annex approximately 507 acres of land from the unincorporated portion of the town of Monroe into the village of Curious Shoal. In August of 2014, a second petition was filed with both boards, in which 164 acres of land is sought to be annexed again from the town into the village. A secret study and analysis with a public hearing, as many of you will recall, was conducted. An environmental impact statement in its final form was accepted and issued by the lead agency earlier in August, earlier this summer. And the Village of Curious Joel has issued its secret finding statement as well as its resolution approving both the 507-acre petition as well as the 164-acre petition. Tonight, it is the time for the town board to vote on both of those petitions and issue its secret finding statement. I believe that the town board members should discuss the rationale for any decision they make, and they should vote by roll call, and that vote should be properly recorded.
Michael, thank you very much. We have a motion that we need to be made concerning an approval of 163.8 acres with disapproval of 507.4 acres.
Okay, I'll make the motion. I move that the town of Monroe consent to the 163.8 acre annexation. The town board hereby finding that it is in the overall public interest and that it disapproves the 507.4 acre petition. The town board hereby finding that it is not in the overall public interest to grant that petition. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion for discussion. Call the question? Discussion. Gentlemen, each person, if you'd like, you can please opine on your position, and then we'll move forward. Mr. Bigwater, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to take just a few moments to make some comments. I would like to thank everyone, all of you folks who wrote me or called me in the past 4 days to let me know how you felt about the annexation. I apologize for not getting back to each one of you individually, although that would have been my preference. I did listen to all your messages. I understand your concerns. I took the time to read everything that was presented by every one of the specialists, by every one of the attorneys, and the village's document of Sunday night. There was one overriding theme that I took from all the missives that I did receive, and that was to do the right thing. The dilemma becomes one of, what is the right thing? Everybody presented their case, and each one individually seemed to be the right answer. The annexation issue itself is probably one of the most difficult decisions I've ever been faced with, other than the movie theater. I understand each argument, both for and against. I empathize that there has been a frightening amount of misinformation or false information that has been spread through various media. I have friends on both sides of the issue, and that makes me realize that I will not be able to satisfy or appease everyone with my vote. And that for me is trouble. I am troubled by the apparent discrimination that exists in the village against certain members of the minority. I am disappointed by the fact that the school district has not reviewed the statements that if the annexation is approved, there will be an immediate reduction of budgeted programs in the Monroe Woodbury Central School District. That lack of responsiveness has created the disturbing outbreaks of last Monday's town board meeting. The school board could have resolved that with one simple statement. Folks, I am afraid that we, including the board, this board, are all guilty of behaving badly over the last 20 months. It is my firm belief that had there been a meeting of all interested parties before the annexation petitions have been filed, we may have been able to reach an agreement that would have been in the best interest of all of the town residents. And I would suggest, even at this late date, as suggested in the county CGR report, that we try to resolve our issues and not allow the courts to resolve this local issue for us. Per New York state law, if this motion is passed tonight, we still have the ability over the next 30 days to have such a discussion. Putting aside political, emotional, or philosophical considerations, my vote is based upon the comment of the town's consultants. There needs to be a supplemental EIS that includes a longer-term extrapolation of population growth so that a build-out scenario can be developed to assess, without emotion, the environmental issues to develop proper remediation proposals. The way the secret process rests at the moment, I do not believe that the best interest of all of the residents of Monroe is not to be served with a yes vote.
And I'm ready to vote tonight.
Is there anyone else that would like to? Again,
I would like to
thank everybody for coming down tonight. I know this is a very hot and contentious issue because, as Mr. McWard has said, there's been a lot of information and misinformation and a lot of emotion that's been keyed up on both sides of this issue. There are no easy answers in this, and as a board, we've agonized over this almost 2 years now, a year and a half. And I dare say that after all the robocalls, after all the messages, positive and negative messages, all the hurtful things that have been said on both sides, I think as a town we have to step back and take a breath and look at facts. I think there's so much emotion tied up in what we think is going to happen and not what will really happen. In this area, we already have 2 building sites that are built out. We have more on the way. And what we're looking at as a board is trying to find a solution that would serve the people who live in this area. The town has limited resources. The area in question, the town cannot provide what is necessary as far as water, sewer, and even fire protection. It's an issue. It doesn't mean that it's said and done here and done tonight. It's an issue that I think that as a town, as people, as family members, we should come together and try and bring some sensibility to what's going on. And I know that right now, it's not going to happen tonight as far as toning down the emotion, because too many people have been talked up on one side or the other. I am ready to make my decision, and it has not been made lightly. I have been up for months. I know that in the end, that both sides probably won't like exactly what I'm going to say. But I will stand my decision, and I'm so willing to listen and to work with people to join our town back together. Our town has been torn apart. The village has been torn apart. This has been very arduous. So I will make my vote, but understand this. It has not been easy. Not one bit.
I'd like to make a few comments on this issue, which has been contentious and problematic for a lot of people. As the other members of the board said, there's no easy solution. No one's going to be perfectly happy, no one's going to be perfectly upset. It's going to be something that will, in my opinion, the motion put forth is more, to me, what I consider a compromise. When you have two differing opinions that are strong on both ends, equally forceful and equally passionate, I think our responsibility as representatives of everyone is to try and consider some ground where we can at least have a compromise. Now, if you look at the one, we call it the 164, if you look at that, that's less than 1/3 of the 507. Now, I always follow politics and decision makers who had difficult decisions to make. And I remember some quotes from someone that, sometimes you have to take half a loaf. It's better than nothing. And if you are on the opposition, if you give half a loaf, it's better than giving the whole loaf. So you got to meet somewhere in the middle. My opinion is, as someone who has to make these decisions, is that if you look at it less than 1/3, I think we have to, I will look upon it as difficult, but something proper. We, as a community, have a deep division, probably deeper than I ever knew. I've lived here for most of my life, and it's been kind of disappointing, but that's just the way it is. So looking at the reality of it, I think that the 507 was too much. It had a lot of people upset, and I think rightfully so. Maybe this should have been done as a small annexation petition in the first place. Maybe it wouldn't have unnerved people so much. I know that there was a lot of bad talk, perhaps from everywhere, and I think a lot of hurt feelings. And I hope in the future we can move away from that. But there's technical reasons where there's effects, and with any development there will be effects. Any development in the village of Monroe where I live, there's developments going on right now that have been approved that's going to affect my life in the village and the traffic and everything else. It happens throughout the county. Orange County is developing. It's growing. People are moving up here. In the case of the Acidic community, they have a high birth rate. They're growing. They need some room to expand. So one way or the other, there's developments happening everywhere. So we can't put our head in the sand and expect to have no development in the town of Monroe anywhere, because it's happening all around us. Slowly but surely, the town is developing, and when we say the rural character of our town, honestly, this town of Monroe is not really rural. It's suburban to New York City more than rural. And we have to accept the fact that our location near the highways and the trains, it's a perfect spot to commute from, where many of us do, both in the Hasidic and the non-Hasidic community. A lot of us head down to the city every morning to earn our living. To read some technical stuff, when you look at the benefit and detriments are customarily defined in the terms of municipal services such as police and fire protection, health regulations, sewer and water service, public utilities, and public education. This involves examining the fiscal impacts on both municipalities, particularly the relative ability of each to supply water, sewer, and emergency services to that territory. It's pretty obvious to all of us who the documents we've been given, the experts that studied it, that the Village of KJ is more able to give these type of services to the people who are looking to annex into KJ. That is a fact that's unavoidable. It's usually that way in any annexation. The rulings usually go in favor of people who will be able to provide the services to the people who are looking to annex in. That's part of what we have to look at. That's the honest fact. We have to look at that. We have to balance it against benefits and detriments of the other community. We have to find a balance of the impacts, and that's a hard balance to find. The fact is that we have to actually, in our heads, draw a line where the 164 perhaps is a better boundary, where the higher density housing of KJ would end, and then the lower density housing of the town of Monroe would begin. When you look at the fingers and the way KJ was initially established, a lot of people even back then thought the fingers, it made more sense probably to be inside KJ, the village itself. So this could be looked upon as correcting past mistakes, in my opinion. I think that it makes sense. The village's growth has required major investments in infrastructure, which can be extended at relatively low marginal cost to the territory, while providing additional tax base to the village to support these investments. The town board finds that the additional territory will help defray the village's higher costs, for example, for professional police, fire services, water, and sewer. The town cannot provide water and sewer to the village of KJ. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the money to do it, and we cannot do it. We also feel that in the future there's greater density development than allowed in the town. That we think will be almost inevitable. But in the 164, you have a lot of URM zoning, which is denser development allowed than in the other parts of the town of Monroe. So it sort of correlates if you look at it logically. This annexation is favored by some of the members of the board because it will enable development in locations where services are available and only the political boundary prevents such development. The village's land use regulations that extend to the annexation territory are likely to allow higher density development and hence higher tax rateables and revenue to support better and more comprehensive public services. The town's rural residential zoning classification restricts the construction of multifamily housing typical in the village near the annexation territory. If the annexation is completed, the village is expected that the further planning and environmental analysis is only area in a manner consistent with that in the village near the annexation territory that can be provided to moderate and low-income families. There are a lot of moderate and low-income families in KJ that are looking for housing. Now, I'm not going to judge anyone because we all have our own built-in and perhaps learned thought process. But when I talk with my village residents where I live in the village of Monroe, I always point out, if you don't want, if you have a distinction where you don't necessarily want the people of KJ, primarily Hasidic people, to come out into our school district, into our neighborhoods to buy homes, the annexation actually makes sense. Now, I personally think that if we look at this just technically, without looking at people's opinion against it, and the uproar that's been caused, which we have to consider as a town board, I would actually think 507 is the logical solution. But I will say that the board is not considering that now. We considered it, we came up with a compromise, and we are not unaware of the fact of the feelings of half of the community. We're basically half a community and half a community, non-acidic and acidic. The town board has taken very seriously the complaints and the fears and worries of the non-acidic community in order to go to a compromised position. And the last thing I'll get into is one thing that has disturbed some of the members of the town board recently. Some of the members mentioned it. I'm just going to read something here. I'm sorry. And it has to do with the educational system. I've been contacted by many of the members of my area of town about the school districts and the effect on the school district if any or all the annexation were to go through. Now, I'm going to read you something here quickly. The school district boundary. The annexation will not automatically reconfigure the boundaries of the two school districts in the area, and therefore the town board has considered both the effects of the districts if their boundaries remain as they are, and the effects of the boundaries of change to conform to the new or possible new municipal boundaries. If the annexation occurs, but school district boundaries do not change, the village residents and expected additional inhabitants of the annexation territory are unlikely to attend Monroe Woodbury Central schools. Attending instead their private parochial schools in similar fashion as occurs within the village of KJ. However, private school students are entitled to transportation, remedial services, books, and other services provided by the public school district at a cost. Therefore, if the annexation enables additional growth in the annexation territory, but the territory remains in the Monroe Woodbury Central School District, additional services will be required. However, if the territory remains in the MWCSD as it develops, increased property valuations and therefore additional tax revenues should provide for the increased services demanded from the projected additional families in the annexation territory once it develops. The specter of the problems, famously put forth many times, under which the East Ramapo School District now labors, well known by all of us. Surfacing here has been argued by some as a near certainty. We do not see it that way as a town board, and the experts who deal with it do not see it that way. East Ramapo has no second school district. It's a totally different situation. There's no boundaries, there's no separate district. Adjustment of the school district boundary to conform to any new municipal boundary, if any annexation is to occur, avoiding the East Ramapo problem. I said this a year and a half ago. If you want to keep our schools as our schools and their schools as their schools, the annexation, and then an almost immediate changing of the school boundaries agreed upon by both school boards, KJ and Monroe Woodbury, would have the desired effect of preventing for the far future any issue of becoming what has happened to be a mess down in East Ramapo School District. I think it makes sense if you look at it logically, without emotion, and think about what I'm saying here. I'm not saying it just to convince you. If you don't agree, I understand. But at least think about what happened in East Ramapo. They were all in the same school district. If you do not, or we do not, and the courts do not agree to have the annexation, I think what's going to happen inevitably, because I talked to school district superintendent Petman, I see what's going on around the town as I speak to both groups in KJ. Some of them are designed to come out and buy a lot of the properties that are now being developed in the village of Monroe and the town of Monroe. And in this country, you have every right to buy property anywhere you want. And it's inevitable if they don't have room to grow. But because the KJ school district has already voted, as it says here, to adjust the school district boundaries upon any annexation occurring, I think that they're making a step in the right direction. And I hope that our Monroe Woodbury School District would do the same thing, get past the emotion, some of the political rhetoric that happens in every town and in this town over a heated issue, and change the school district boundaries. I'll read something here for you. This change would be authorized by state law, Education Law, Section 1507, and may well be, and we think indeed should occur. Resolution of that issue rests. a great school system, and a wonderful community. So I just say, let's work it out with cooler heads. Let's get together and have a nice, good community from now on. Reduce animosity and work together and be open. We need all governments to be open. We need all governments to stop discriminating against certain groups. We all need to get along. Otherwise, we're all living. If we don't take this seriously, on all sides, look deep into our souls and in the mirror, and treat everyone as we want to be treated, it won't work. It won't work. So let's do that now while we have a good chance to do it. And I'll proudly cast my vote the way I see fit tonight, and I hope we all can move on from there. Thank you.
I'll try to wrap this up as quickly and without duplicating some of the efforts and the comments that the other councilmen have made. This afternoon, I spoke with a Charles Zaberla. So Zaberla is the New York State Deputy Commissioner on Education. I wrote to the Commissioner last week. I spoke to the office last week, and I asked them to come. I asked them to come down and hear what was being said about the demise of the school systems here in the town of Monroe. That's not only the Monroe Woodbury School District, but the Procedural School District. Mr. Zaberla, the New York State Deputy Commissioner, was quite frankly unaware of many of the issues we face today, but he certainly was well aware of some of the issues that are facing East Ramapo. We all agreed that the issue of East Ramapo is completely different than the issues here that we face. New York State Education Law 1507, it allows for the redrawing of district lines. It is something which is embedded in the law. It is something which the creation of the Procedural School District is not exempt from. However, regardless of whether or not the Monroe Woodbury School District will continue after 2 years to vet the issue and analyze it until it reaches a threshold point where someone else has to step in and rule for or against them. Regardless, it appears as though the KG School District and the Monroe Woodbury School District do have the right to be able to redraw district lines. But more important than that, it's not the redrawing of the district lines. It's the fear that, as Councilman McWhorter said, it's the fear that's being instilled in the families as we speak. Last week, we had a board meeting. You could hear, you could feel the seething, the anger, the anguish that the parents had. You could see the terror in some of the kids' eyes. It is not something which falls on our deaf ears, and it is something that not only the parents of the Monroe Woodbury School District hold dear to them, but it's something that the families and the parents of the Procedural School District hold equally as close. It appears as though, despite the extraordinary efforts by two extraordinary superintendents, that is Elsie Rodriguez and Joe Patton, despite everything they tried to do all that's right for the children, we as a community are not able to come together. We are not as a community able to sit and realize that if a new district if lines are redrawn, what does that mean in terms of being able to prevent an East Ramapo kind of a scenario from unfolding? We need to listen better to both Mr. Petlin and Ms. Rodriguez. We need them to be able to stand together and have a discourse amongst themselves and out in the public, including the New York State Board of Education, to be able to give us some kind of understanding what can and what cannot occur. The biggest problem here was someone wrote in one of these social media that the day after a yes vote, that programs would close and immediately jeopardize the future of after-school programs in the Monroe Woodbury School District. This is a lie. It won't happen, it could not happen, and according to Mrs. Zaberla, the budget had already been sent. and the tax levies had already been computed, it would be constitutionally impossible. It would violate New York state law. But that doesn't mean anything, because when you want to instill fear and panic into a community, fear and panic into the hearts of parents who want nothing better for than their children's education, whether they're SATMAR children or they're non-SATMAR children. People go to any lengths to be able to undo the things that school districts are trying to provide, and that is a future for these children. Moving to one other subject, and that is regarding the infrastructure. The town of Monroe, for whatever reason over the last 20, 30, 40 years, never invested in infrastructure. It was something which my predecessors felt was not something which the unincorporated part of the town, which is more rural in character, that it should invest in. We have a lot of money in what's called fund balance. We have more money and we're in a healthier position than probably any community in Orange County. And it shows in your taxes, not your school taxes, not your village taxes, but in your unincorporated taxes. We have a lot of money, but we have very little infrastructure. The Fingers are a perfect example. The Fingers, many years ago, those are the areas that were not incorporated into the Curie-Shorrow village. They remained outside, but literally inside, the Fingers as we call them, inside Curie-Shorrow, culturally, physically, in all ways, shape, or form. There was some kind of not only overlap, but there was a seamless integration. As we review this request for 500 acres, we look and we say, what is the likelihood that Curie-Shorrow in the near future could provide the kind of infrastructure in 507 acres? We question that. We wonder if that is absolutely possible, given the extraordinary type of infrastructure that are going to be required. We've seen Curie-Shorrow 15 years ago. 15 years ago, it started the process of trying to get a water pipeline in. Look how long this journey has been for something as what we consider to be a lifeline to this community as it is to 75 other communities which share water from the New York State, from the New York City aquifer. Sorry. We all assume that this journey regarding the property rights in the Fingers and outside of the Fingers is going to take a long journey. And the courts will ultimately decide. And the courts will look at quality of life as defined by law, not as we see it as human beings, but as the courts see it. This is something which preserves the integrity of the democratic process above and beyond everything else that we as moms and dads and members of the community wish for ourselves. The courts will ultimately be the people that decide the future of this community, and they will look at the past. Curie-Shorrow will grow. Orange County will grow. And we all have that right to be able to provide the services that are needed, and if we're willing to pay the price to make them come true in the form of taxes, so be it. However, what is the actual likelihood that in a reasonable time, 500 acres are going to be developed? Anyone who drives around the 500 acres, or in the, I think it's called the Allegro annexation, we look at this, which is almost 800 acres altogether. We look and we say, we can't provide, we cannot provide, either in the 300 and some odd acres under the Allegro annexation, we cannot provide sewer and water and different kinds of requirements that they have requested. We cannot provide that either in the 507. But what we can reasonably ascertain is that under the URM zoning that we currently have, that there is a likelihood that the village of Monroe, the village of Curie-Shorrow, if that annexation does go through for only 164 acres, that they will be able to provide the kind of infrastructure that's needed for the 164, not for the 507. And then when we look at it and reduce down, the likelihood that many of those acres are not going to be developable. We have, I believe Councilman Colon has discussed this, we have a lake which is 40 acres. We have grove trees, fruit trees, which are not developable. There are many spots here within the 164. I will finish that are not developable. Others, like Mesa, are already developed. And the likelihood of that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue. But we have a community which needs to grow. We have a town board which never, in the 30, 40 years that I can go back, ever provided the infrastructure that was needed to be able to prevent annexations from occurring because we do not provide the services that are needed. In summary, this annexation request we've had for almost 2 years. And for almost 2 years, the only voices that you've heard are members of the town board. County exec has been silent. Senators have been silent. Congressmen have been silent. U.S. senators have been silent. Everyone's been silent. The only time that we hear from them is when?
Can we have some decorum, please?
The only time we hear from them is when they are prodding the public either for support or they're prodding the public because they don't have answers. The town of Monroe is now faced with an enormous decision. What do we do? How do we go about and make sure that the rights under the establishment clause are not violated, that we do not give any one particular group a right because of religious reasons over anyone else. However, the issue of infrastructure is critical to the analysis. The issue of infrastructure is critical. Can the village of Procedural complete what is necessary to be able to provide the type of infrastructure? And can it provide the infrastructure which is necessary outside the 164 acres? I believe this vote reflects that we disapprove the 507 acres and that we approve the 164 acres. Gentlemen. And with the full confidence that both the superintendent for Monroe Woodbury School District and Joe Patton for the Procedural School District, including Deputy Commissioner Zubrilla, get together and make sure that we all understand that our children are not at risk, that tomorrow morning when we wake up, nothing will change, and nothing will change in the great foreseeable future. Gentlemen, that being said, Michael, Mr. Donnelly, should we read the decision on page 21 forward? We need a roll call vote. This is for Michael, can you frame it correctly? This is a roll call vote for the approval of 163 acres with the disapproval of 507.4 acres. 163.8, 507.4. Call the roll here. Hold on, sorry. Harley Bowles, aye. Rick Colon. Aye. Dennis Waters.
For the reasons I stated before, no.